Good afternoon, all, and welcome. I'm Dave Nash, strategy professor and also part of the Fox Management Consulting team. And today our topic is going to be manufacturing resilience and innovation. And we're very fortunate to have an experienced manufacturing executive who has not only run manufacturing companies from a CEO role, but on the board of a number of manufacturing companies to join us. So Lynn Utter is here today, and we're glad to have her. So welcome, Lynn. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dave. Glad to be here. Thank you. My pleasure.
And if we could start, perhaps you could give us a little bit of background on yourself, your career, and how did you get into manufacturing?
So I'll try to keep it short. So I'm a Texan originally. Went to business school, actually Stanford Business School on the West Coast. Left business school and did a pretty traditional management consulting. So the Fox consulting side resonates with me. And after a few years in consulting, I really wanted to get out there and do it rather than advise someone else how to do it, whatever it might be. I went back to PepsiCo, which is in Texas, kind of my home state. PepsiCo had a great training program, so that was really the original draw, and I went into finance and sales and marketing initially. Pretty quickly, a guy that I had been dating back in my consulting days, I thought he would follow me back to Texas. He did not. He got himself a job in Denver, Colorado, and this sounds really silly, but the fact of the matter is, I called PepsiCo and said, I got to get myself to Denver. And they said, Lynn, there's no management training program in Denver. There's nothing there. Bad idea. I said, there's got to be something. This is a big company. They said, well, we have a warehouse job open at Frito-Lay. And I said, I'll take it. And they tried to talk me out of it, but it was probably one of the best moves I ever made. I love the job. Frankly, I killed it. And the next piece is that my boss later took another job, and he needed a head of manufacturing to oversee 3 manufacturing plants. And he called me, and I said, I don't know a dang thing about manufacturing. He said, no, but you'll figure it out. And so that's how I got into manufacturing.
That's a great story. So I know now with the companies you work with at Atlas, I believe there's 18 or 20 of them in the manufacturing and distribution world. So how has the pandemic impacted your companies, and have there been any lessons learned so far? Yeah,
look, so I will answer this from the Atlas standpoint. So I just, again, for context, I serve on 4 corporate boards right now and also serve as an advisor to Atlas Holdings. Atlas has 23 manufacturing companies. And so to answer your question, Dave, the sector and manufacturing has been severely impacted. I mean, first of all, supply chains have been fundamentally changed, right? And in many sectors in the manufacturing arena, in a positive way, we've had to redefine our supply chains and make more and source more goods from here in the U.S. and more locally. And so what's interesting is I think many of these companies, in fact, all 23 of our companies were deemed essential. By the way, there wasn't a lot of rigor on that, but we said, look, we got to make, and we make everything from steel bridges to food packaging to toilet paper. Yes, we have a toilet paper plant that's in pretty high demand. We do some food processing. We make plywood, chain link fence. So we have a range of products. All of them were deemed essential. And so look, what I would say I've learned, or what we've learned in this process, unlike previous recessions, this one had very different implications no matter depending on where you were. So we have our automotive businesses totally shut down, right? Automotive shut down globally. So those businesses literally furloughed thousands of employees just in the Atlas world in the first week, in March. We had food processing and packaging businesses that couldn't hire enough people fast enough. And so there really was this range of impacts. And what I'd say is, look, I think we knew from previous recessions, you have to act fast to align your cost structure to your demand cycle, your demand set. And I would say most of our companies pretty quickly did that. And I think a lot of manufacturing entities across the U.S. did that very quickly. What I think worked also is that, and frankly, better than I've ever seen before, the government anticipated that. They anticipated layoffs, anticipated the layoffs, and so they put in place a number of government programs, think PPP, the CARES Act, to protect unemployment benefits and, in fact, enhance unemployment benefits, protect workers who had child care issues and other health issues, and to keep them, if you will, as whole as they could for a defined time frame through July. And so I think what worked well is that businesses took quick action. The government anticipated that and largely helped a lot of folks find short-term. Now, by the way, not everybody. I get that. Restaurants, for example, a lot of self-employed folks. But in the manufacturing sector, a lot of folks had some safety net. But I would say, you know, I guess one more thing is so with all of that, we anticipated, in fact, our HR leaders were worried. Oh my gosh, now we're going to have issues with people are going to be afraid to come to work. They're not going to be able to come to work. They might be sick. Even if they want to come to work, they may have childcare issues and can't come to work. Or if they come to work, they'll be distracted and worried about the job, the economy, and they'll either not do good work or get hurt. So we had a lot of worries in our manufacturing companies about how is this all going to play out in the companies themselves. What I would tell you is our worst fears did not come to pass. And in fact, what I would tell you is literally across all 23 of our companies, we've had extraordinarily high attendance rates. Our absenteeism has been literally next to nothing. People have come to work. It's been extraordinary. Our safety records have been strong. I wouldn't say they've gotten better, but they've certainly not gotten worse. We've actually got two plants. I'll give you a plywood plant in Mississippi that lost, their demand dropped. So all the construction projects, you can imagine, construction projects stopped. Many of you are probably dealing with that. Our demand went from, full throttle to almost nothing in that plant. We've got a skeleton crew working basically half of one shift. They literally set all-time performance records in April and May. And our toilet paper plant, same thing. Record all-time performance in April and May. And so, and by the way, a lot of our other companies are doing really well, maybe not record-setting. But so what's been interesting is our teams have shown up. They want to do good work. They want to keep our economy going. They want to keep their customers fulfilled. That's really been the mantra we've had. And I have to say, I've been pretty heartened by what we've seen so far.
That's great. That's some great stories. Well, I know you and I spoke before that you've led companies through some challenging times in the past. And but how's the pandemic different? And what are you seeing in terms of the management side of that?
Yeah, so I'd say a couple things. So first of all, I was in charge of a furniture company when the 08 cycle hit. And I got to tell you, when the global recession hit, everyone stopped buying office furniture. I'd gone from running a beer business where people drink at good times and bad times. I just left that job and went to office furniture, and I learned the hard way in my first 3 months, when you have a recession, nobody buys office furniture because they're cutting their workforce. They're not adding to it. So last time around, I had a really deep dose of, oh my gosh, how do you do this? How do you adjust a manufacturing infrastructure that fast? But we just had, a lot of my colleagues had just come out of the 01-03 bubble. And so you had a lot of executives last time around who had seen a recession in the last few years. This time around, we fundamentally have had a growth cycle in the U.S. for the last 12 years, unprecedented growth. And so this time around, and this is now coming mostly from my boardrooms, the management teams, by and large, hadn't seen this movie before. And so you had a lot of folks trying to figure it out. The other big difference is that the last time around, the capital markets are what got hit hard, right? The mortgage crisis hit the capital markets, hit the banks. They didn't have capital. They couldn't loan to us, the manufacturers. So it kind of trickled down and hit all of us in some way. As I said a minute ago, this one has been much more spotty. It's been some businesses thriving and trying to, Amazon can't hire workers fast enough, literally. And other businesses completely, in a very different place. So this is a much more uneven playing field. So it's been very different. And so the last thing I'd say is, I think this time around, there's just so much more unknown. Even if you've got some, gray hairs like me around the management table, we've never gone through a global pandemic. So this notion of how do you communicate? How do you communicate to your team when you don't know the answers? There's just so much more ambiguity. You don't, are we recovering? What does that look like? Is the workplace safe? We're doing our best, but can we promise we're safe? There's just so much more ambiguity this time around. And I think, A, that's hard, and B, the layers of complexity on a management team. And I think about our first line supervisors who are trying to keep the lines running, right? They're trying to keep, make sure the folks are coming to work, keep the lines running, all the challenges I just mentioned. But now they're dealing with their own stress, their employees' stress. Again, people who are working from home. I've watched, I've talked to a customer service leader who had 30 people under her. Okay, she'd never worked from home before. Her team had never worked from home before. She's got a 2-year-old and an 8-month-old. And she's trying to manage being a stay-at-home mom, not a working mom who's now at home. It's just the complexity of what managers are dealing with in this time. And I'll now throw in the racial tensions. There are a lot of our associates are Black. And so and if they're not, you get a lot of other people trying to wrestle with, what does this mean? What does this mean in my workplace? And so I just think right now you've got a much more complex workforce engagement challenge than any leader, any manufacturing manager has seen in our country in a very long time. It's complex.
Challenging. As you look forward and think about the landscapes that may emerge on the other side of at least this crisis, or crises maybe, what changes do you anticipate for manufacturing, and how do you think manufacturing will adapt to those changes?
Yeah. So look, the first one's talent. Manufacturing, I guess I should have started out by saying, look, I've been in manufacturing now, 30 years, running plants, running plant systems. In the last 20 or so years, there has not been a lot of talent drawn into manufacturing, sadly. It hasn't been the hot place for MBAs and Temple grads to go necessarily. Now, there are those of us who are the stalwarts who, been in there, and I love it. But those of us on this call have not been in the majority, right? And so there's just a talent gap. Secondly, you add to that, a lot of our manufacturing plants are in rural areas, right? The cost of labor is lower there. That's where the U.S. manufacturing footprint has by and large gone. You don't have Philadelphia having nearly the manufacturing base in our zip codes that we used to. And so that creates a whole talent challenge that has been there. And now as we think about, back on-sourcing again and bringing back a lot of goods and services to be produced here in the U.S. and distributed here in the U.S., we got a talent problem. Now I say that, I think it's also an opportunity. I think how we all embrace attracting talent, blue collar, white collar. How do we think about apprenticeship programs? Bring back, the centuries old notion of journeymen and apprentices. How do we take on training and not necessarily expect college degrees where they aren't necessary? How do we bring back the excitement in manufacturing? And there's a lot of good work to be done. And I guess I just mentioned, I think our frontline supervisors, we're going to have a dearth of talent there who can manage the complexity of the technology and the manufacturing operations and the emotional capacity to lead effectively. And so for me, this is actually a place where talent, if we go think about attracting and developing talent within our sector, I think it's actually a pretty exciting time, but it's work. This is work that we're going to have to tackle in a different way. Clearly there's technology. Let me step back. I think also capital. We have not invested in manufacturing in capital for years. Have we invested in new emerging technologies to some degree? But look, a lot of small and medium manufacturing businesses can't afford high-tech robotics and AI. We haven't found some more approachable and affordable technologies to deploy in our manufacturing environments. And I think now we've got to find a way. And I think the capital markets will be more open when they see markets turning our direction. So I think talent, I think capital, I think R&D. And I guess the last thing I'd say is actually one more, I think, important piece. We just got to think about what we expect of our manufacturing systems. Yes, low cost. Yes, high quality. Yes, high service. But what about resilience? And I'm part of a lot of boardroom conversations about what does resilience look like in a supply chain, and how do you build that in? And that's an arena, again, ripe for research and insight and innovation. How do you think about a resilient supply chain here in North America?
Manufacturing, and you and I both have a lot of enthusiasm about manufacturing. So, but it's I think it's a very exciting place to be, and there are a lot of challenges, but there are challenges that'll be, people are going to meet these challenges. I'd be curious what advice you would give executives navigating this crisis. How should they be thinking? How should they be behaving?
Gosh. So this is probably very much one of those do as I say, not as I do, because I won't swear I've done these well. But I would say a few things. And I would say a few things. One is communicate. And specifically, if you haven't watched Jim Collins' YouTube on the Stockdale Paradox, it's 6 minutes. It's not long. Go find it. Jim Collins is a guy I've actually worked with a bit. He wrote Good to Great. But the notion that you have to communicate to your associates with this balance of the brutal facts and using data and the tough realities we're dealing with, but ending on an upbeat note, right? Give folks a reason, a realistic reason to hope. And I really do believe, in fact, I know, I've seen the data. Manufacturing associates are now, they trust CEOs now more than they have in the last 20 years, okay? And part of that is relative. They don't trust the government. They don't trust a lot of other politicians and other people. So maybe it's the short stick here, but the fact is, our folks are looking to us for information and guidance. So communicate. It doesn't have to be perfect. Communicate. That's one. Two is getting comfortable with ambiguity, because none of us have swum in these waters before. It's complex, and we are not going to have the luxury of time to figure out all the right answers. And so I think, and what I'm watching and seeing are those people who do what they can to get the facts and make decisions and move forward, right? That's what's going to move us forward. And we may stumble, but it's just navigating the uncertainty. There's just far more gray in the world right now than black and white. And the last thing two more things. One is just courage, and that sounds silly, but this is scary. And if anybody, this call is not acknowledging that these times are there's some vulnerability, and what if I get it wrong? What if I do the wrong thing? What if I say the wrong thing? What if I make the wrong decision and it costs people their jobs? It is hard right now to know the right answer. But I think we as leaders have got to find that courage to move forward and to make decisions and move forward. And the last thing I will say is I think also finding, recognizing we're in for a long haul here. The shutdown was tough. But the reopening is not going to be easy. How we reopen, how we bring people back in our workplaces, we're already seeing it, right? Some folks want to come rushing back and go back to the old ways. The old ways are not there. Our offices can't look like they used to look. Workspaces are different. Work environments are different. Our break rooms are different. We got to take temperature checks. We're doing contact tracing. And so, this is hard, and it's going to go on. So I think we all have to find, whatever rituals work in our own life to set some boundaries and take a deep breath. This is a long haul, and we're not done yet.
Well, Lynn, first, I want to thank you for that. I think manufacturing has a much more significant place than perhaps it has in the last few years, and these kinds of challenges are the things and your insights are really helpful.